Hi, this is Professor Brown-Cedarberg, and we are going to be talking about keyboard input. Now, when we talk about keyboard input, we have to talk about a stream. And a stream, specifically an input stream, is a way of getting information into our program. We are going to do that using an object, an instance of a class. We're going to associate that object with a device or file. When we are talking about keyboard input, we are associating our object with the physical keyboard. Now, in order to do that, we're going to use the class scanner. The class scanner comes with the language Java. If we're going to use it, we'll have this line, import java.util.scanner, at the top of our program, actually outside of the declaration of our class. But with this line, we say we are going to use the methods within the class scanner. Now, in order to use those non-static methods, and all of the methods of the class scanner are indeed non-static, we have to create an instance of that class. That instance is an object. We'll create that object, our instance of the class scanner, with this line, scanner keyboard equals new scanner system in. Now, this line goes inside the body of our code, inside whatever method we want to have access to this instance. Now, you'll see that when we execute this line, when we write this line, we're specifying the type of the object we are creating. We're giving a name to that object, and here in this class we'll use keyboard as the default name for any instance of the class scanner that is associated with a physical keyboard. Next, we repeat the type. You see here on the right side of the assignment operator, we're actually creating the instance of the class with that keyword new. So we specify the type and then pass our argument, establishing the specific stream, and with system.in we're establishing that our stream will be the physical keyboard. What we're doing here on the right-hand side of the assignment operator is calling the constructor, and we do that with the keyword new, the constructor of the class scanner, and here we have, with this line, the creation of an instance of the class scanner named keyboard that is associated with the physical keyboard. Now, having done that, we now have access to the methods of the class scanner. The methods of the class scanner are non-static. That means they must be called using an instance of the class in which they reside, that is, an instance of the class scanner. We've created our instance and we called it keyboard. We'll call those methods using the dot notation. So our calls will be keyboard dot and then the name of the method. Each one of these methods will return a value. Now, the first method we'll look at is nextInt. And what it does is it returns the next value of type int, a whole number, that's typed onto the keyboard. We call it this way, scanner object name, whatever that might be, and for us that's keyboard.nextInt. So here we have a typical line, keyboard.nextInt. That will return a value of type int. If we want to save that value, we have to do so into a space of type int. So here on a single line I've declared a variable of type int, named it a, and put into that space that which is returned when the method nextInt is called by the instance of the class scanner that we named keyboard. That method fires, grabs the next value of type int that's typed on the keyboard, puts it into the space that's named a. Our next method is nextLong, returns the next value of type long that's typed on the keyboard. We do so with the scanner object name .nextLong, and we'll do that this way, keyboard, that's our instance of our class scanner, .nextLong, and that will return a value of type long. We'll save it into a space of type long. If we don't save it, it's gone. Next method is nextByte, and as you can imagine, it returns the next value of type byte that's typed onto the keyboard. We call it with the name of the scanner object .nextByte. Here how it's done with our instance of the class scanner named keyboard, keyboard.nextByte, and it will be return back a value of type byte that we can store into a space of type byte. Our next is short, return a value of type short, called in our usual way, and here in our example keyboard.nextShort, we save it into a space of type short. Here we have nextDouble, returns the next value of type double that's typed. We call it in the usual way and returns back a value of type double. Next float returns the next value of type float that's typed into the keyboard. We call it in the usual fashion, returns back a value of type float. We then have the method next, and what next does is it returns back the string value of the next keyboard characters that are entered by the user, up to but not including the first delimiter character, and that's by default a white space character. So we call next this way with the name of the object, in our example keyboard.next, and it'll return back a string that we can save into a space of type string. Now notice that it grabs what the user enters up to but not including that first space. We then can change that delimiter with this method. UseDelimiter is a method that can be used to change the delimiter used by methods that do use it. So if I called the method UseDelimiter, calling it through an instance of the class as we have here, keyboard dot, and I pass it an argument, and that's the new delimiter, whatever it is that I want to be the new delimiter, replacing the default of a space. So here with this line, keyboard.useDelimiter, I'm passing a comma, and that will become the new delimiter that's used in methods that use that capability delimiters, like next. We have a method next boolean, and it returns the next boolean, value of type boolean that's typed onto that keyboard. We call it in the usual fashion, and we saved what is returned into a variable of type boolean. We've got next line, and next line returns back the rest of the keyboard input as a string value, goes up to the end of the line, sees the terminator, and discards it. We call it in the usual fashion, in our example keyboard.nextLine, and it will return back a string, and we'll save what's returned back into that string. Now, we have an issue when we're mixing inputs of different types. It's a problem with dealing with the terminator. Next line reads the remainder of a line starting wherever the last keyboard reading left off. So if I have a line keyboard.nextInt and save what's ever passed back into a space called A, so int A equals keyboard.nextInt, and then I have a line string S has put into it whatever's returned when I call next line. And what I have is this input. So my input is 1 potato, 2 potato. Now the two lines int A equals keyboard.nextInt will execute, and then string S equals keyboard.next line will execute. If my input is 1 potato, 2 potato, what will be saved into A will be 1. That's what's returned when I call nextInt. What will be saved into S will be potato, 2 potato. That's the rest of what's on that line. Okay. Now, here's some code. Here's a very simple program that declares an instance of the class scanner inside the main method. You'll note that I have the import java.util.scanner outside the class. So I've established that I want to use the capabilities of that class. I have created an instance of the class, and now I can use the methods. And so I have declared an int called age, a string called first name, a string called last name. I ask the user to enter their first name. I grab that and put it into the space first name. I ask them to enter their age. I grab that and put it into the space called age. I then ask them to enter their last name, and I put that into last name. I then want to just print out the value of first name, last name, and age. So you'll note that I've asked for first a name, a string, then an int, and then a name, a string. So it goes string, int, string. Now, this is the output from the execution of that program. It asked someone to enter their first name, and I entered Mickey. I entered an age, and I entered 13. I entered the last name, and I entered Mouse. What was printed out was this. The first name was Mickey, that's fine. The last name was blank, and the age was 13. What happened was, as I mixed the types of a line and then an int, I run into the terminator problem. So here, as we look back at that code, we see that I asked for the first name, and a string was grabbed, put into the space first name. I then entered an int. The int was grabbed and put into age. But the read head sat right after the int, right on the return that the user entered. So when here I ask, please enter your last name, what was grabbed was a blank. That line, last name equals keyboard.nextLine, actually grabbed the enter key that was pressed after the user entered in the age. So I have this output. The first name was grabbed, the age was grabbed, but the last name was not, because what was picked up for the last name was just the press of the return key. So how do I deal with that? I'll flush the line. You see, this code looks very similar to what I had before. I ask for the first name, I call next line, save what's returned into first name. I then ask for the age, called next int, put it into age. But I then call next line, not saving what is returned into any space. I just have the line keyboard.nextLine. That's flushing the line. That moves that read head beyond that return key, so that now when I execute the line last name equals keyboard next line, I'll grab what the user entered in response to my request, enter your last name. So here I see the execution of this program as I entered Mickey at 13 and then mouse. Those were appropriately grabbed and saved into the right spaces. So first name was Mickey, last name is mouse, and the age is 13. So when we're talking about a terminator problem, that is when I'm combining non-next line and new line methods, what I need to do is flush the line. And I'll do that with just keyboard.nextLine, and that'll move the read head, advance it to where I want it to be. I don't save the value returned because I'm just trying to get that return key. So what have we seen in this lecture? We've talked about input streams, how we create an instance of the class scanner. It's an object, and we can therefore use the methods of the class scanner. We've associated that instance with a physical device, in our example here, a keyboard. We've used the line input java.util.scanner. That's a class of non-static methods. And we've used those non-static methods to gather information from the user through the keyboard. Thank you.